When we go through top 25 overall rankings for 2024 fantasy football, it's important to know that we need to be ranking these guys in order how we should be drafting them, particularly in a redraft league. So if you're in an ESPN league with your buddies, or a sleeper league, or a Yahoo league, these are what the overall rankings are going to be tailored to how you should be drafting these players in a half PPR format. But first, I have to announce this week's winner of the FFN hat, and this week's winner is Dave53414. His hottest take was that Pat Freiermuth finishes as a top 5 tight end and scores more than 8 touchdowns. So Dave, congratulations on winning the free FFN hat, and I'm still giving away one per week to somebody who goes down there, drops a like on the video, is subscribed to the channel, and gives me their hottest take for 2024 fantasy football. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and give me your hottest take for 2024. Now let's go ahead and get into these rankings, starting out with our first tier of guys: Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, and CeeDee Lamb. Look, my thing with these guys is they all have that massive potential that are easily top 3 picks in really a lot of fantasy football formats. The only way I could see myself going a different way is if it was a non-PPR standard league where I would be going like Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, probably over Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb. But of course, we're talking about half PPR today, and Christian McCaffrey is what it is. Really don't need to discuss it. I've said consistently over the offseason, my thing with Tyreek Hill over CeeDee is because with those two guys, we need to split hairs here on greatness levels, right? And obviously, CeeDee is a great player, but Tyreek is probably a greater player. And also, the biggest problem here that CeeDee is going to have that Tyreek doesn't is that Tyreek Hill has a viable number 2 option that is going to not allow defensive coordinators to scheme triple coverage, double coverage on him all game, because they know Jaylen Waddle can take the top off the defense. Dallas doesn't have that. They do not have a viable number 2. So defensive coordinators can go into the game just saying this is their best weapon, not just the best receiver, the best weapon that they have. So all we really have to do is shut down CeeDee Lamb and we're good. So you'll see a lot of double coverage, lots of triple coverage shifted over to CeeDee Lamb on a more regular basis than you will with Tyreek Hill. So this one is pretty clear for me. I've been really clear about this one all offseason. Don't know how much more clear I can get on this one. Now, in our next tier here, I really like these guys as well. And obviously, we're talking about our second tier of guys that are going 4, 5, and 6 range in ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper League drafts: Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, and Breece Hall. Now, there's been some shifts in my recent rankings. I just prefer Jamar Chase just because of the draft strategy that I have really decided to kind of hone in on in 2024. So the reason I like Jamar Chase is because I simply believe that not only, we'll get this out of the way, Jamar Chase obviously, I believe, has the upside to be a wide receiver 1. I think in the case that Tyreek Hill has a down season, or CeeDee Lamb, or both of them have down years, Jamar Chase is the guy that I would pick is next in line to be the wide receiver 1. All he needs is to stay healthy, and he needs Joe Burrow to stay healthy for a full season, and I think we have a top 3 player here with Jamar Chase. Now, the other reason that I prefer him over the 2 running backs is because when I look at the draft board, specifically on ESPN, when we pull that up right now, what you'll see is that the wide receivers in round 2, I don't think are quite as good as the running backs in round 2. You're looking at running backs like Derrick Henry. You're looking at someone like Kyron Williams, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. These are just running backs that I just feel are better picks than the wide receivers ahead of them. So this really is a draft strategy thing for me, going Jamar Chase over Bijan Robinson over Breece Hall. Now, with Bijan over Breece, I've been pretty consistent about it of late, which is that obviously, like a week ago, we got news that the offensive coordinator in Atlanta came out and said Bijan might be splitting more touches this year, again with Tyler Algier. Obviously, that's not what any of us want to hear, but here's my reality with this. Here's how I cope with it, and I take the information myself. You have a rookie offensive coordinator who said that was Zach Robinson. They also have a rookie head coach who consistently, throughout the offseason, said he's going to be the centerpiece of our freaking offense. So whose word are we taking here? I'm going to take the rookie head coach's word over the rookie coordinator. So I just think that with Bijan Robinson, if he does see that full workload, he has that league-breaking upside here. But of course, the shadow of doubt with that comment does leave him here in this tier. And of course, I love Breece Hall too. Breece Hall easily could be a running back 1, the overall number 1 running back. And I just think that Breece Hall is a fantastic player. I just prefer Bijan just a little bit more based on offensive situation. Now, dropping down to our next tier of guys here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jahmyr Gibbs, A.J. Brown. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown over Justin Jefferson is also one that I feel like I've been pretty consistent on as well. Now, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, here's the reason why I just prefer him over JJ. Because when I look at the two offenses as a whole, there's been so much change enacted in Minnesota's offense that really hasn't happened at all in Detroit's offense. Now, that could be perceived as a good thing or a bad thing. I actually find it to be an interesting conversation, what people perceive it to be. I think if you went from Kirk Cousins in Minnesota to Joe Burrow, right, like that's a great thing. Or even Kirk Cousins to Kyler Murray, maybe perceived as a great thing. But we're going from Kirk Cousins to Sam Darnold, or a rookie J.J. McCarthy who really didn't throw that many passes per game in Michigan because he was running a Jim Harbaugh offense. So where's the upside? I know Justin Jefferson has upside as a player, and he will do his thing in fantasy football this year. But the upside with Detroit, I just think it's really high this offseason. This offense right now, I think that when we look at this offense, top number 1 offensive line according to Pro Football Network. Top 12 quarterback with Jared Goff. Wide receiver 1 by far. Good tight end option to take some pressure off of him. And 2 really good running backs to run the ball and keep defenses on their toes. So I just think when we look at Amon-Ra and Justin Jefferson, we're looking at 2 guys who have very different floors. I think Amon-Ra has a safer floor, and you don't want to screw up your first round pick. And we're looking at guys who probably have relatively the same ceiling, in my opinion, this year. So in my opinion, I'm just going to go with the guy who has the safer floor because they both have the higher ceilings. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs and A.J. Brown, I prefer Jahmyr Gibbs over A.J. Brown because of that Detroit offense once again. I think that Detroit's offense is just so efficient. Running behind that offensive line is such a gift for a running back. Now, the problem I've heard with Jahmyr Gibbs all offseason and why he is consistently being picked around the 111, 112, 201 range in fantasy football drafts is because of David Montgomery. Obviously, David Montgomery will take away goal line work. I'm not disputing that at all. What I am disputing is the notion that his upside gets taken away because of that. Jahmyr Gibbs last year, that last half of the year, he was getting plenty of work, even with David Montgomery being that primary goal line back. So even if Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't get the goal line work, and I don't expect he will, he's getting all the targets in this backfield. He's getting a lot of runs between the 20s, and he's explosive enough to hit big plays in the red zone, like the 5-yard line, or the 10-yard line, or the 15-yard line. This is a guy who's not going to struggle for touchdowns this year unless something goes horrifically wrong. Now, A.J. Brown's offense is obviously very good as well. I have my questions with Philadelphia this year, just on a more personal level. I don't necessarily trust that offense, and I don't trust that team quite as much. But, of course, A.J. Brown with Jalen Hurts, the connection and the chemistry is obviously so high. And we just know that he's got the big play ability in a half PPR format that's so valuable since receptions aren't quite as valuable as they are in a PPR league. Now, A.J. Brown's going to get receptions, but we know that he's going to see some times where Devontae Smith is going to take over for 20-point games a couple weeks in a row, and he'll see some down weeks, so we really need those explosion games to kind of even out the equilibrium there. So I think that A.J. Brown is pretty worthy at number 10. Now, dropping on to our next tier of guys here. Jonathan Taylor and Garrett Wilson highlight my top 2 in this tier. So with Jonathan Taylor, I've been very consistent about it this offseason as well. Jonathan Taylor comes into the season with an offensive line that is still very good. Coming into the season with an offensive-leaning head coach who was brilliant with Philadelphia when he was that offensive coordinator and made Jalen Hurts break out in 2022. I have no problem with Shane Steichen whatsoever. I think he's a fantastic offensive coach. Getting Anthony Richardson back is really going to be interesting to watch what Jonathan Taylor's ceiling is. I think he has a top 5 ceiling. I don't think top 3. The reason being is because Anthony Richardson is a bigger quarterback, which means that there's a risk of him running at the red zone, taking goal line carries away from Jonathan Taylor. Now, What we'll find out this year is how explosive Jonathan Taylor is after a slew of injuries that have really slowed him down over the past several years. I have a lot of faith in JT still. I think he's still young enough to get it done. We'll just have to see, but I think at the top of tier 3 is right around where he belongs. And then Garrett Wilson, it's all dependent on Aaron Rodgers. This has no other way of going. It's either going to be pretty good, really, really good, or it's going to be about what it's been the past 2 years. It all hinges on Aaron Rodgers staying healthy. We know if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, he's the #1 target by a mile. There's no question about that. We also know that this is just an elite player waiting for a good quarterback. So all we need is Aaron Rodgers to stay healthy. This guy is going to be a good pick in fantasy. Just a little risky, just based on how badly he burned a lot of people last year. But I'm still fine taking him at the back of the first, but I prefer him in the early second round. And then Kyren Williams and Saquon Barkley and Puka Nacua round this tier out right here. Now, with Puka Nacua in general, I think that we just have to kind of pump the brakes a little bit because obviously he is now week to week with a knee injury. Now, Sean McVay came out and said this wasn't a serious knee injury. That's a great thing to hear from the head coach there. And they've also said, like, he's expected to be ready week 1. So there shouldn't be a problem and a fear of him missing time. What the fear is for me personally is with Cooper Kupp, I'm starting to kind of hear like Cooper Kupp may be still the #1. I still think it's going to be Puka. I just don't know how you can justify the reducing his targets for a 30-plus-year-old Cooper Kupp. I just don't know how they could do it. So Puka Nacua is still in this tier 3 right here comfortably, but behind Saquon and Kyren. Saquon Barkley, I've kind of made my points about him all offseason very clear. Thought he was overrated, being drafted way too high in fantasy drafts at the beginning of the offseason. Has come down in price a little bit. Still don't love the range he's going in redraft leagues in particular. Like, I definitely would prefer to get Saquon in the middle of the second round rather than the back of the first round or the early second round. But Saquon Barkley, obviously, great offensive line, great offense as a whole. Going to take pressure off him with Jalen Hurts there. And then Kyren Williams here. This is obviously the big one. Kyren Williams has shot back up my rankings. If you've been following my channel for a couple weeks now, you've seen me talk about Kyren Williams quite a bit and how I wanted to move him above a bunch of guys, but I just couldn't do it yet. I'm there now. Kyren Williams, I have confidence in him again. I will still say there's that sliver of doubt just because of Blake Corum and Sean McVay's lack of commitment to the running back position over the years. It's just a very interesting situation that will be one to watch for sure. But my rationale has always been this with Kyren. When you look at what he did last year on the screen on a per-game basis, this is not some run-of-the-mill regular season that you can justify just saying, we're going to just really give him less touches that are meaningful and give him to the third-round rookie. He had an elite season. You can't justify that. And an offensive coach as smart as McVay, he knows this. Which is why when I look at his line on Underdog, 975.5 rushing yards, this is an easy hire for me. Because last year, he eclipsed 1,100 rushing yards in 12 games. So let's take Blake Corum, give him like 70 to 80 touches. He's not taking away Kyren Williams and his production to a point where he's below 975 yards. So this is an easy hire for me. And if you agree, go on Underdog in the comments below using that link. And when you use code FFN and you deposit $10, they will give you free money to the tune of $250 in free bonus cash to go make some other picks as well, or to get in a fantasy draft on Underdog, which has no time commitment during the regular season. You just draft and forget and watch your bank account grow if you end up winning the whole thing. So join Underdog today using code FFN. Now, dropping down to our next tier here, we've got Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and Devon Achane here. Now, Derrick Henry, I really like Derrick Henry this offseason. I think especially where he's going in ESPN redraft leagues right now, kind of the front of the second, middle of the second round, this is an elite grab to me, in my opinion. In a half PPR format, Derrick Henry is super valuable to me because not only is he not going to be missing out on touches through the air with Lamar Jackson, which he doesn't do. Well, Derrick Henry never did that in Tennessee, really. But the other thing with Derrick Henry is I truly believe, and I've been saying this for weeks, he could lead the league in touchdowns rushing this year. I think it's very, very possible. This guy is running behind a top 5 offensive line in the league, and he's with a quarterback who's not big enough that the team feels comfortable running him at the red zone. There's a reason why his rushing touchdown totals over the last 3 years are consistently lower than Josh Allen's and Jalen Hurts's, because those teams know those quarterbacks are big and they don't have as much worries about them getting injured at the goal line as much as Baltimore does with Lamar Jackson. So Derrick Henry is going to get so much red zone work. To me, it just makes no sense why you would pass on Derrick Henry in this range. Josh Jacobs and Devon Achane. Josh Jacobs dropped for me. Not because I'm all of a sudden like, don't like the player. Still really like the player. Love this situation here. With that Kyron Williams effect, it just kind of had to move him down a little bit for me. Josh Jacobs, I still think is a great grab, especially in value. Like, he's going in like the 3rd or 4th round in fantasy football drafts on ESPN. Absolutely a fantastic grab. The offense is elite. Offensive line is very good. I think this situation is better than anything he's had with the Las Vegas Raiders. So Josh Jacobs, great pick at value. And then Devon Achane, obviously elite offense, offensive-minded head coach, is a genius with his zone running scheme, has elite, efficient running backs running the ball who are blazers. So Devon Achane, I think, leads the backfield, if you want to say that. I still think Raheem Mostert gets a bunch of touches. But I think what the thing is with Devon Achane is he's going to be more explosive than Raheem Mostert is this year. And I think that this offense is just so touchdown heavy that he's worth this kind of price in fantasy football drafts. So Devon Achane, I think the upside is just super, super high. He's going to get targets as well. Devon Achane to me is an elite pick. Moving down to the next tier here. James Cook and Nico Collins are the front 2 guys here. And it really is pretty clear in a sense where it's like, James Cook, I've said it before, bust-proof guy this year. I don't see how James Cook busts with this Buffalo offense and the offensive line that is pretty decent. And you're looking at Joe Brady for a full season with James Cook. James Cook did his best work with Joe Brady when he decided to move off of Stephon Diggs as that primary guy to James Cook. James Cook last year was pivotal in playoff teams. So I don't see a way that he busts. I love drafting James Cook in redraft leagues because he's totally bust-proof and really does have a top 10 ceiling. Nico Collins, I think just honestly, people are a little too worried about him. I get it, like he didn't have 110 targets last year, and with the addition of Stephon Diggs, it's not exactly certain that he gets many more targets this year. My rationale is they just paid the dude this offseason $75 million basically over 3 years and $50 million guaranteed basically. They're going to be pushing to get him the ball. The chemistry developed last year between him and Stroud is very, very noteworthy. You don't just lose that, and you can't just ignore it when you bring in a Stephon Diggs who's 30+ years old and is not exactly the quietest guy if he doesn't get the football. So this may very well not be a great season for Diggs, but I'm very certain with the advancement of CJ Stroud, the upside is just so high for Nico that I can't really justify going with another wide receiver ahead of him. Now with Isaiah Pacheco, he's just in a situation that I really don't feel like is different in a good way. Like, it's not bad that the situation's the same because obviously he's playing for the Kansas City Chiefs and it's the running back 1 there. So we know the touches will be there. We know the efficiency will be there. We know everything that's good will be there. Targets will be there. Touches on the ground will be there. Touchdowns will be there as well. I guess for me, it's like based on the touches that he got last year, we really have to see like a tremendous touchdown season for Isaiah Pacheco for him to really surpass where he's being drafted. Like, he's being drafted really high on ESPN drafts right now, and it's a little too high for me, but I understand the reasons why. Like I said, I think he's relatively bust-proof, but I really don't know how much higher his ceiling is unless we see a massive touchdown season, which is, of course, very unpredictable, but I feel comfortable having him here. And then the 2 top quarterbacks, I believe, belong in this range. I'm not saying draft them at the end of 2nd round. I am actually planning on doing that in a couple leagues here in a couple weeks because of the running backs available in the 3rd round. I want to go wide receiver round 1, quarterback round 2, running back round 3. That's my plan that I'm going to utilize here in a couple weeks. And it's just because the quarterback values here, I think, are great. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts obviously both bring the rushing upside. They're both, Josh Allen definitely a 4,000 plus yard passer, and Jalen Hurts has the elite weapons to do that as well. So those two guys are going to separate themselves very early and maintain that throughout the season. So in my opinion, grabbing yourself an elite quarterback this year in fantasy drafts is just the right move to do, whether you're in an ESPN draft or a best ball league on Underdog, in my opinion. Now, to round out the top 25 here, Travis Etienne and Sam Laporta here. I've had my issues with Etienne this whole offseason, I'll tell you guys. Etienne, I think that the big problem I've had with him is that Doug Peterson, the head coach there, has consistently said this offseason, we're going to limit his touches and we're going to give the ball to Tank Bigsby more. It's been consistent. It wasn't just a passing thing once. He said it consistently. So I do have my issues with Travis Etienne's workload this year, but at the same time, if they lower his workload by like 5 or 6 touches, that'll help his efficiency. And I think that was the problem last year, is they figured out with all those touches that we gave him, 20 plus a game basically, he's just not kind of built like that, and it led to some lingering injuries that kind of lingered throughout the season and made him a little less efficient. So if they give him a couple less touches per game, that's fine, because I think his efficiency goes back up, and I think this Jags offense is still good enough to where Travis Etienne is not a bad pick. He's just not my preferred pick at running back. And then Sam Laporta, first tight end off the board, in my opinion, is how it should be. I know when you're looking at ESPN, you're seeing Travis Kelce oftentimes go ahead of Sam Laporta. My advice, don't do it. Travis Kelce's in his mid-30s. We saw the decline for him begin last year. What makes you think that he's all of a sudden going to be a better player this year for the duration of the fantasy season? Travis Kelce's best work came in the playoffs. So I'm not saying Travis Kelce won't be good, but Sam Laporta just coming off in a historic tight end season for a rookie, it just can't be overlooked. And again, this Detroit offense is so rich with fantasy football upside this year. Sam Laporta easily crosses 100 targets, and this guy is probably going to be averaging close to 14 fantasy points per game. So in my opinion, at the back of the second round, early third round, Sam Laporta as your first tight end off the board is a very solid pick. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you're interested in using the double hero running back strategy, click on this video right here to see the full truth about the fantasy football running back strategy that is double hero running back.